my name is Aaron Tyner. Welcome to my skills video where I'm going to be demonstrating the IV piggyback and IV push administration. Before we get started, I'm going to make sure that I have all the equipment needed for the IV piggyback and for the IV push administration. We're currently in the med room. We're just going to get the medications ready in here before we go into the room. In the med room, I'm going to do my first and second checks, and I'll do my third check once I get to the patient's room. Before we get started, I'm going to pull up the patient's MAR and look at the IV piggyback and the IV push medications, and I'm going to be looking at the fluids that the patient is on and make sure there's no contraindications with IV fluid and the medication that's going to get pushed and get home. If there was any kind of inconsistencies like that, I'm going to make sure that I call the MD, and if that doesn't clear it up a little bit better, then I'm going to make sure that I call the pharmacist to make sure there's no further complications that I should be aware of. So before we get started, I'm going to make sure that I wash my hands. So the first medication that we're going to be getting ready is the IV push. It is lorazepam. The lorazepam required a little bit of math. So this is the math that I've done. Per my calculations, I found out that I cannot push more than 0.5 milliliter over a 15-second period. So I'm going to then get that medication ready to go. So I'm going to get my medication vials out. These are multi-use vials. Per practice, because I was practicing, these don't have the blue tops on top of it. I would make sure that I look for that when I go to administer or prepare medication. So before I get started, I'm going to clean the top of the medication, making sure I clean for 30 seconds, and when 30 seconds is up, then I'm going to let it air dry, and then 30 seconds is up, and then I'm going to get another, and I'm going to do the same thing for the medication itself, for the other vial. So I'm going to clean for 30 seconds. 30 seconds is up. I'm then going to get 2 unopened needles. I didn't have enough supplies, so we're going to use these today. So when I go to mix this, because the lorazepam needs to be diluted, I'm going to make sure that I do the normal saline first in the vial, and then I'm going to put the lorazepam in there to make sure it dilutes. So I'm going to pull up 1 milliliter of air, and I'm going to pull the needle off, and I'm going to insert it here, insert the air in, and then I'm going to invert it and pull back 1 milliliter. Once that's done, I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to engage the safety. And then put this to my first, okay. And then for the second needle, I'm going to pull back 1 milliliter. I additionally forgot to say that I'm going to pull this back to 2 to give adequate room for the medication to get inserted in here. So I'm going to pull this back to 2, leaving 1 milliliter of air. Okay. So then I'm going to take the needle off, and I'm going to insert it in the middle, and just insert the air, flip, and pull back 1 milliliter of solution. Once I've done this, then I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to recap the needle. Once I've done that, I'm going to take this needle off, and I'm going to put this into the sharps container, and then I'm going to uncap this needle and put this into the sharps container. I'm then going to insert this medication in like so. Once all the medication's in, I'm going to then activate my safety and put this into the sharps container. I'm then going to get a red cap. I'm going to put it on top like so. Once the red cap is on, I'm going to make sure that I label it. I'm going to label it the time, date, and my initials, what's in there, how many milligrams is in there, and a patient identifier so I know which room that it needs to go to. And then that's all that I would be doing for the preparation of the medication for the IV push. Now I'm going to get the IV piggyback medication ready. So I had to go get the medication out of the med room. I'm gonna make sure that when I get the medication out that the med room is locked. So at this point, I'm going to do my first check against the screen, make sure that it's the right thing. And I'm also gonna do my second check at this time to make sure that I have the right medication. I'm then going to pop the top off of here. And I'm gonna put that into the trash can. I'm then gonna just wash my hands because I touched the floor. And then I'm gonna get an alcohol wipe and I'm gonna clean the top of the container for 30 seconds. Once the 30 seconds is up, which it is, I'm then going to make sure that it air dries before I start messing with it. Then I'm gonna get the piggyback bag, and then it also has the pop top, so I'm going to pop this off, and I'm going to also clean this at this time, making sure that I don't contaminate it or anything like that. If I feel like I've contaminated it, it's better to be safe than sorry and just go get another one. So I'm going to clean this for 30 seconds. Once I've cleaned that for 30 seconds, which I have, then I'm going to kind of let it air dry, and I'm going to get the Addy's adapter and I'm going to connect it to the bag. So I'm going to use the clear part and I'm going to insert it like so. I forgot, I just messed up. I would actually insert this portion into the Practi powder. And then I'm gonna insert the green portion into the bag. Once you do this, then I'm going to start getting the fluid into the bag. Then I'm going to kind of start inverting it, agitating the fluid inside the bag, just to make sure that all the medication has been diluted and dissolved. Once I feel like it's diluted and I don't see any kind of crystallizations in the bag or in the bottle, I'm going to insert the medication into the bag itself. Making sure that I get all of it in there. And then the same thing with this one, I'm going to make sure that I label it with time, date, initials, my name, since I'm the one that's prepared it. And I'm going to put what is in the bag. And then I'm going to go to the supply room and I'm going to wash my hands, and then I'm going to go to the supply room, and I'm going to get my secondary IV kit for when I go in to actually attach it to the IV pump and start administering the medication. Alrighty, so I'm going to wash my hands before I go into Mr. Brown's room. I'm going to say, hey Mr. Brown, my name's Aaron, I'm a student nurse here at San Diego Community College, and I'm going to be administering an IV push medication, and I'm going to be hanging an IV bag today. It's going to take me about 10-15 minutes to do. Do you have any questions before we get started? Okay. And then I would make sure that I ask him his name and date of birth. Mr. Brown, do you have any kind of allergies that we should be aware of? No allergies? Okay. So at this point, I'm going to wash my hands and I'm going to put on gloves. As I'm putting on the gloves, I'm kind of going to be looking at the IV site, making sure there's no signs of infiltration, no signs of phlebitis. I'm also going to ask him questions such as, have you had any kind of pain at this site? just to make sure that the IV is still good. Once I do this and get my gloves on, like so, I'm then going to pulse IV infusion, and I'm then going to come down here to the end, and I'm going to crimp the line, and I'm going to pull the orange cap off. I'm going to clean for 30 seconds before I attempt to flush the line. So 30 seconds is up, and I'll let this air dry. So then I'm then going to get a flush. I'm going to make sure that when I take the top off, I pull it back to kind of break the pressure so it doesn't shoot everywhere. And then make sure I get the air out of it. So when I am when I'm flushing, I'm going to make sure that it's easy to flush, which it is. And I make sure there's no kind of infiltration starting to show up once I actually introduce the fluids. I'm then going to pull back and aspirate to see if there's any kind of blood return. If I get blood return, then that's fine, that's great. But if there is no blood return, it's okay, as long as the IV is still patent and the fluid is still flushing through that saline lock. I'm then going to take the flush off, and I'm going to put this into my trash. I'm then going to clean again. And while I'm cleaning this time, I'm going to make sure that I do my third check on my medication. After this is cleaned, I'm going to make sure that I scan the lorazepam, and I make sure that I scan Mr. Brown's bracelet to make sure that I get the third check into the system. And I'm also going to make sure that I check it against the screen to make sure that I have the right medication. So then I'm then going to take my cap off, and I'm going to start to administer the lorazepam. This lorazepam also required a little bit of math, like I told you in the beginning of the video. I'm going to make sure that I don't administer more than half a milliliter over a 15-second period. So once the medication has been administered, I'm going to put this into the sharps container, and I'm going to get a flush, and I'm going to break the seal again, and I'm going to do the same thing, but as like I was still administering the lorazepam, due to the fact that there's still medication in the line, and we don't want to introduce it to the system too quickly. So once all the medication's out of the line, I'm going to put this into my sharps container, and I'm going to get a new orange cap. I don't have one, so I'm just going to reuse the one that I used to practice with. I'm going to insert that on. At this point, I can uncrimp the line, and I can restart the IV pump. I'm also going to educate, while I'm cleaning up, I'm going to educate Mr. Brown on the signs and symptoms that he might be having an adverse reaction to the medication. I'm going to tell him that he might feel really, really tired. I'm also going to tell him that if he starts to feel and he gets nausea and vomiting, to let us know, just so we can come assess and make sure that he's okay. At this time, I'm going to then start the administration of the IV piggyback. So with IV piggyback, I'm going to make sure I have a secondary IV tubing. I'm going to make sure that I also do my third check at the bedside. So I'm going to check it against the screen, and then I'm going to scan Mr. Brown's armband. I'm going to make sure that I scan the barcode that's on the bottle of the medication. So I'm going to scan that, make sure all that's checked. I'm then going to remove this aluminum piece right here. Once I've done that, I'm going to get the spike part out, and I'm going to remove this, making sure that I try to keep it sterile. I'm going to insert it like so. Once I insert it here, then I'm going to fill my drip chamber, and I'm going to make sure that my roller clamp is closed. So my drip chamber is filled, so I'm going to go ahead and hang it, but I'm going to make sure that I hang it above the primary fluid bag, just because we want gravity to act on this bag so that this medication gets infused before the normal solution gets infused. So I'm going to go hang my bag. Normally I would use this to hang it, but the weight of this is going to cause it to fall down, so I'm not going to use that for right now. At this point, I'm going to get a alcohol wipe, and I'm going to clean the port that is closest to the IV pump. So I'm going to clean here. And I'm going to let that air dry. And while I'm letting that air dry, I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to attach this section of the IV tubing to this port. Once I do this, then I'm going to undo the roller clamp so the line can back prime. So once the line is back primed, I'm then going to set up the IV pump. The rate that we're going to set the IV pump for this medication is 100 milliliters per hour. So I've got that in, my wires are in, and then I've started. Once all this gets in and I make sure that it's infusing the way that it's supposed to, I'm then going to clean my area up, and I'm going to put this into the trash can. I'm then going to make sure that Mr. Brown is aware of the signs and symptoms of the medication of an adverse reaction for the antibiotic that was given. If he has any signs like nausea and vomiting, to let his nurse or healthcare team know, so we can come in and check him out to make sure that he's okay. I'm then going to take my gloves off, and I'm going to wash my hands. I'm going to make sure that everything is documented the way that it's supposed to be, and I'm done with this skill.